Well, howdy folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk a little bit about my Jeep. Little side note, the Scout made it back from its heated garage vacation. I've been using this thing as a little runabout around the yard here today, and she's doing great. I'm real happy with that, but we'll look at the Jeep. So she looks a little different from the last time you guys saw it. Obviously, the last time you guys saw it is when I got this thing. We just drug it here, stuck it here, and didn't have any front sheet metal on it, so that's different. I got some help here a couple weeks ago, and we just put the fender's grill and the hood on it and the windshield frame so I could sort of see the Jeep as, you know, complete. And man, this thing looks super cool. Like, obviously I didn't put the matching black hood on because the black hood has a hood scoop on it that, well, I think that hood scoop is pretty dumb looking, to be honest. So I threw this hood on. It's kind of the nicest out of the bunch. And, well, I think it looks pretty cool. All this stuff is just stuck on here with tie wire and a couple bolts. Nothing too fancy. Nothing's holding this stuff on super secure, but it's good enough that I could see it as a complete Jeep. And, well, that's kind of what I was after. So, like I think I said in the last video, the tub is a Korean War era M38 Jeep. So the M38 Jeep was made from about 1950 to 1952, and the M38 is essentially what replaced the World War II MB and GPW Jeeps. So that's kind of a neat thing. One of the key things about the M38 is that these two tool indents got moved from the driver's side to the passenger side. So prior to this Jeep, all the military Jeeps had the tool indents on the driver's side, and then they moved them over here on these Jeeps. All of the military Jeeps had glove boxes, or the Flatfender military Jeeps anyways. So MB, GPW, and M38s are all Flatfender Jeeps, and they all had glove boxes. But the CJ2A, CJ3A, and CJ3B, none of those had a glove box, which I find kind of confusing as to why they would do away with the glove box, but, you know, whatever. So, yeah, pretty neat that this thing has a little glove box. The World War II Jeeps had a bigger glove box than this, but yeah, I got a little reference guide for these things, and this hole here was for an Arctic heater kit. So, I mean, this thing, I'm almost dead certain, served most of its military life here in Alaska, so it would have had a heater kit, so it makes sense. Over here would have been all the data plates and whatnot. One thing I noticed is I do have this VIN tag, which is awesome. I wasn't sure if this thing was going to have a VIN tag on it or not. There's not. It would have had one on the firewall, and that's completely gone, so that's kind of a shame. But, oh well, if I have a VIN number, at least that's better than nothing. One of the cool things I noticed is I'm pretty sure this is the M38 windshield frame, and you can tell the M38 windshield frames are different by the M38s have these plates blocked off, and on the CJ3As, this was a vent that you could open from the inside. Kind of a neat little thing. And I'm not too sure, well, I can see the hole there, so somebody changed the way this plate is bolted. It would have been bolted with a strap there and a strap there, and somebody added these screws. So anyways, pretty neat. Just traveling around this thing. These 750 16 bias plies are in actually really nice shape. I'm pretty impressed by that. I threw the tailgate on this thing. This tailgate is one of the nicest ones I've seen for a flat fender. They're usually all beaten up or just completely rotted out. This was somebody's big project, I can tell you that, because when I got this thing, I noticed, you know, these shackle mounts are brand new, freshly bolted on here, but like, I don't know if you guys can see that at all. There we go. These bolts aren't tight at all. So I think somebody was working on this thing trying to get it restored, and they just ran out of time, chucked it in a storage unit, and forgot about it, which is a shame. You can see my tools under there. Today I'm working on making this thing roll. Unfortunately, the rear end is pretty wasted. I pulled the drain plug on this thing the other day, and you can see the rust on there. I can see that bearing cap right there is all rusty, so this thing's pretty scungy. I'll probably end up pulling the cover there. I'm just trying to get the pinion to spin I know that the carrier bearings and the pinion bearings and all that, they're completely junk. So this rear end needs completely gone through. And I don't know if I'm going to end up going through this rear axle or if I'm just going to swap it out with another one that I have. So anyways, I'm just trying to make this thing roll. It'll make it a lot easier to get it moving around the yard and whatnot. Obviously, the plan for this thing is I'm going to take the tub off the body here, start with the frame, and work my way through it as I go, because I want this frame completely stripped down and painted. And honestly, I don't know if I'm going to use this frame for this Jeep or not. It's kind of it's up in the air. This frame is super crusty and rusted, and I'm not a big fan of that. There you can see all the rust jacking on that body mount. So this frame has seen its better days. So yeah, I don't know. This tub is definitely savable. It's in pretty good shape. You can see rust bubbling in the paint down here. I don't know which way to go with this Jeep project, but you know, kind of play it by ear. I think I'm going to start with a frame and then worry about the tub when the time comes to worry about the tub. So some more neat stuff about the Willys M38. That was where the parking brake handle went, was on the outside of the driver's side of this thing, which is weird. The gauge panel that's independent, I just threw that in there to kind of get a look at it. I have a steering column and everything for that, fortunately. All that's down in the shop. This funny hole is where the headlight switch would have gone. These had kind of a unique headlight switch, being the military style with blackout lights and all that. Here you can see a hint of the original olive drab. So yeah, this thing's pretty cool. And if we go over here and grab a look at this frame, here's that top that was in that storage unit. This thing is pretty neat. I found a similar looking one that was on the internet. It was sitting on top of a World War II Jeep. So these are kind of an interesting top, and it's not a military top, actually. Not that I could tell, so it's some custom-made something or other, but there were some of them made. So I'll need to dive in this thing and see if there's a tag on it or anything, any information. Up here, this is the M38 frame, so the frame that goes to that tub. Of course, I might have mentioned this in the previous video, but you can tell that by the lift points here on the frame. That's M38 specific. You can see I got all my body panels and everything out of the shop. I threw them up here. There's still a ton of junk down in the shop that I'm trying to clean up, but well, time's a moving slow and whatnot. So I might end up using this frame. Unfortunately, I'd have to cut all the cool additions off. I know it looks super greasy, but I've always enjoyed all the greasy additions that people put on stuff like this. So anyways, enough of another overview, since I sort of talked about this thing last time. But well, let's try and make this thing roll. I think I'm going to grab my socket set, pull the diff cover off of there. We'll have a look at that rear axle. Alrighty, well, I was laying under here pulling the diff cover. You can see I got that guy all loose, but one thing I noticed, you can see that brand new brake line. Looking at the backside, I'm almost certain those wheel cylinders are brand new, so I wonder if this thing has new brake shoes and all that in there. That would be awesome if all that was brand new. Some, you know, any new part on this thing's definitely going to help me in the long run, but something fun I noticed. You can see right there, this cross member's rotted out, so man, this frame is super pitted. Like, it's like this thing sat in a swamp or something, and they finally, like, got tired of it sitting out there and stuck it in a storage unit. I really wish I knew more about this Jeep before they, you know, abandoned it. Like, even the U-bolts are brand new, but they're not tight. And, that looks fresh, like somebody just went through this thing. And, well, it's a real shame because it's wasted now. I mean, all those bearings are junk. Yeah, like I said, I was using a pipe wrench and that little bottle jack to push on the pinion. I mean, that's how much force I was put the pipe wrench on the yoke and was pushing up with the bottle jack to spin the pinion, and it was like barely budging. So yeah, this thing is, unfortunately, this rear axle's wasted. I mean, it looks like this was somebody's restoration project and it just completely fell apart. So, you know, that's a shame, but that's what you get when you pick up these old projects, you know. It also looks like that's an open diff. Darn, I was hoping somebody put a locker in this thing or something cool, but, well, beggars can't be choosers. So anyways, I'm going to hose this thing down with some PB Blaster or something and try and get this rear end freed up. Like I said, this thing's not serviceable really. It needs a complete rebuild, but I'm hoping I can get it good enough that I can push this thing around the yard without, you know, breaking my back. Alrighty, well, after having the diff cover off, having a look at that, and I tried a little more to get the pinion to free up, just to get the pinion to spin, and yeah, bottle jack pushing up on a pipe wrench on the yoke of the pinion, and it wasn't spinning. This rear axle's pretty well wasted, so I cruised on down to the shop, and I grabbed this rear axle. This is another Jeep Dana 41. It came out of the same storage unit. I know nothing about it, other than everything spins, so anyways, I figured the U-bolts aren't even tight on this thing. I'm going to jack it up, put it on jack stands, and we'll just swap out the rear axle real quick, and then she'll be mobile around the yard. And, well, whole drivetrain on the Jeep needs to be gone through anyways, so away she goes. Well, got this thing up in the air. This brake drum wasn't stuck on, so I popped it off, and yep, it's exactly like I thought. Brand new brake shoes. Looks like a brand new wheel cylinder. Rubber's not all cracked up on that or anything. It's all clean in here, like somebody was going through this. Such a shame they didn't put any freaking gear oil in the darn thing. That's got 44 cast into it, so that's a big Dana 44 axle. The one behind me in the Scout there is a Dana 41. So, man, such a shame. This was a really good chassis for a Flatfender Jeep before it got abandoned. Alrighty, just got the old Dana 41 all bolted in here. Like I said, I don't know anything about this thing, but I know that the hubs spin, and that's better than that thing. So, kind of a shame that that Dana 44 is bum. I'm almost certain that that's got to be out of a later Jeep, but I don't really know when they switched to putting Dana 44s in them. But I can tell you, you can see the hub design on this one. So you have to pull this entire hub assembly off to get to your brakes. And like you guys saw, these ones have the drums that screw into the hubs. It's very, very similar to my Scout there, except even my Scout has a Dana 27 in the rear. So I don't know all the specifics of it, or, you know, all the nonsense, but that would have been a really good rear axle if it was still good. It's savable, but, you know, a lot of time and effort and whatnot needs to go into it to bring her back around. So we got a good Dana 41 in there. I'm going to throw the wheels on and we'll get her on the ground. Alrighty, well, I was putting the wheels back on this thing and I just had to investigate. I noticed that the big nut on this side wasn't even tight. This thing wasn't even swaged onto these axle shafts. So I went ahead and pulled the nut. Unfortunately, this axle shaft looks absolutely boned. It looks like somebody took an angle grinder to it, and that is really not good. Does not bode well for this, but it had fairly new brakes on it. So it looks like it was a pretty decent axle at one point in time, but unfortunately that axle shaft is pretty well wasted. I mean, yeah, you could take it to a machine shop and have them build it up with weld and then machine it back down, but the cost to do that's way too much. So that's not cool. I wonder if that side's similar. I noticed that side the hub's not swaged on at all to the I don't think swage is quite the word, but these are kind of a press fit where the hub slides onto this tapered axle shaft, and that's what holds it all together. So obviously if it presses onto this section as well as a little bit of this section, but most of the pressing is on here. And yeah, if that's not an even smooth surface, this thing is no bueno. But I'm just going to throw it together like all this is. I'm just trying to make this darn thing roll so it can roll around the yard. I'd like to do some work to this Jeep over the summer, but You know, it's going to be short little time intervals that I'm working on it, so I want to be able to wheel it into the shop and be able to wheel it back out as soon as I can. So anyways, interesting stuff. Alrighty, well, there she is back on the ground again, and she's rolling. This thing like weighs absolutely nothing. Of course, it doesn't have any, you know, engine transmission or anything like that in it, so that's awesome. That means over the summer here, I'll be able to wheel this thing into the shop and out of the shop as I need to. This rear axle, I don't know if it's the springs. I think the passenger side's farther forward than the driver's side. I'm not sure, but it could also be that the tub's not really square on the frame because the tub's not bolted down or anything. But yeah, that's interesting. Honestly, another thing I think I decided today is I don't think I'm going to be using this frame. If you look right there, right here, you can see that crack in the frame. It's rusted through this rear cross member. This is where the pintle hitch would mount. And yeah, it's rotten through this cross member as well. And like I've shown you already, the shock mounts and the body mounts all along this frame are super pitted and whatnot. This frame's definitely workable, but I think I'm going to put this M38 body back on the M38 frame. Those had a little bit more stiffening in them and whatnot, but yeah, I think that other frame's a better choice. And given that nothing's really, you know, bolted onto this thing, I'll be able to wheel this thing in. I'm going to take these leaf springs and axles and put them on the M38 chassis. These are brand new leaf springs. You can still see where it says Alaska Spring painted on them, as well as there's barcode stickers on these things. So these are good brand new leaf springs, spring hangers, all that. I'm going to take all the good stuff, put it on that other chassis, and this frame I'll save for another project another day. So, but all that's a little ways down the line. I'm not going to worry about it right now. Future stuff. But anyhow, I finally have a Jeep that looks like a Jeep, and I finally have a Jeep that rolls like a Jeep. So, you know, little by little we're getting there. So anyways, yeah, some interesting stuff. That rear axle, of course, needs completely gone through. I can't fathom why somebody would go at those axle shafts with the grinder like they did. That is just atrocious. So yeah, it looks like we're kind of looking at a bunch of hacked up old parts and whatnot here. Got the little Scout being a reliable runabout here today. So I think my Jeep is going to be on this frame. I hate to do it, but I think I'm going to cut off this rear bumper, and I'll get a new rear bumper for this thing that's nice and straight, since I'd like my Jeep there to look kind of nice. So I don't know, I have to move away from the greasy old brazed together frame rail and all that. But well, it is what it is. This bumper will definitely end up on the shop wall, and I can get some new parts, but this frame is definitely in way better shape. Oh, there's actually the brake master cylinder still on here. I didn't realize that. Yeah, this frame is nowhere near as pitted, as well as with these. I know that this is the actual frame for that body. This is the M38 Jeep frame. And yeah, I mean, this frame is nowhere near as rust pitted and nasty as that other one. So some little stuff to fix up on this frame. But I think when I get the opportunity, I'm going to start cleaning up this frame and getting it ready to swap the body onto it. So it's going to be a busy summer. I'll get to it when I get to it. Like I said, today I really just wanted to get the Jeep mobile so I can get pushed around the yard as need be, so it's not just kind of stuck in the way. And yeah, we'll sort of get around to it when we get around to it. So anyhow, I'd like to thank you guys for watching this video, these derelict productions and all this nonsense. Hopefully you guys enjoy the Jeep as much as I do. I really like this thing. It's fun to work on. Well, it makes it easier to work on when nothing's bolted together. Those U-bolts were like not even tight at all, so it like basically fell apart for me, which is, you know, kind of handy. It's kind of scary. It is what it is. But anyhow, as I was saying, thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.